This is chaos. No, this is chaos. Hey, welcome back to my game room. Have you ever really played the Barrel of Monkeys game? It is a game. It was invented by a guy named Dinhofer, who was linking together parts of machinery out of a parts bin just as an idle task on the break time. And he said, this is kind of something I think my kids would like doing. And shortly thereafter, a company called Rexor began to produce a game called Chimp to Chimp. And this was in 1962. Well, along came a toy industry innovator named Jim Becker. He was responsible for bringing us a lot of classic toys and games throughout the latter half of the century. In fact, to the extent that he was inducted into the Toy Fair Hall of Fame in 2018. And among his many other adventures, he was president of Lakeside Toys in Minneapolis in the 1960s. In 1965, he discovered the Rexor Chimp to Chimp game, and Mr. Becker put the Barrel of Monkeys in the barrel. And that made a lot of difference in the popularity of the toy. As a matter of fact, it rose to prominence shortly after its release in 1965. It was the Toy of the Year, or number 2 in the Toy of the Year ratings for 1967. They also produced the Gumby and Pokey toys, but that's not a game. And that's not really what I want to talk about this week. Let's talk about the legacy of Lakeside Toys. They were a very prolific game company in the later 60s, early 70s. Board Game Geek lists 89 games to their credit. I think it's very unlikely that you've never played a Lakeside game before. Here are a few of the classics from Lakeside. The Lakeside brand was bought by Leisure Dynamics in 1969. They filed for bankruptcy in 1983. It was bought by Coleco in 1985, and then finally absorbed by Hasbro in 1988. You might say they were in pretty good company by that time. Of course, Hasbro had bought up quite a number of different companies, including Parker Brothers, Milton Bradley, E.S. Lowe, Ideal, Selchow and Ryder, Gabriel, Avalon Hill, and more. Among those iconic Lakeside games was Chaos. Chaos was produced for over a decade, several different configurations. The parts changed, colors changed just a little bit, but it was essentially the same game for the entire run. Now, if you try to search for the Chaos game, be sure that you get this Chaos game, not this Chaos game, not this Chaos game, not this Chaos game, not this Chaos game. And there's a lot of other Chaos games. So this is the one you're really looking for. This is my version of Chaos game from 1971. And you can see that it's set up for a 4-player game here. You play with 2 or 4 players. The objective, as I noted, is to get to the other side of the board. And you do so by moving these pieces. You can move forward 1 space. You can move forward at a diagonal. You can move sideways 1 space. You can even move backwards at a diagonal, but you cannot move straight backwards. That's a little bit of a restriction on the movement. 1 space at a time, you move across the board. Each player in turn does their movements like so. And eventually, you get to a point where these pieces will be intermixed on the board. And you start to lose track here of whose pieces are whose. And you get out on the middle of this thing here. And it's like, okay, we're halfway through the game. I'm going to move this piece this way. Now, I might get away with that. But if that other player says, wait a minute, that's my piece, you can't move that, or even it could be somebody else's, I challenge you. If I challenge you, I'm using the green pieces over here. When we flip it up and it's not my piece, which it is not, it's the blue player's piece, I was wrong. Right? I grabbed the wrong part. I might have done that intentionally for some strategic advantage. I lose my next turn. If, however, that challenge said that you can't move that piece, that's somebody else's piece, and I flipped it up and it actually was green, there's one, then I would be right, they would be wrong, the challenger would lose their next turn. So those accusations can be powerful, but they can also be devastating, so you want to watch out for that. Now eventually, you'll get all your pieces to the other side. When you make that final move that fills all the far spaces of the board, and the move is not challenged, you've won the game. Oh, and there's one other rule I forgot to mention, and that is that you can jump as well. So that you can jump either on a diagonal or you can jump in a straight line like so, and you can even do chain jumps. So multiple jumps are possible where you might be able to jump twice, that kind of a thing. But again, those challenges apply. You make that jump and somebody says, well, thank you for moving my piece. That's a challenge. Did you move my piece? No, I moved my piece. Aha! Then you lose the next turn. The original version of the game was apparently published by a company called Airfix in the UK. They were a company that made plastic model kits and miniatures and such. And that was in 1970, the same year that Lakeside came out with their version. I'm not sure if there was an agreement between the two, but they're virtually the same game with different graphics and slightly different pieces on the board. But at about the same time when Lakeside was publishing this game in the U.S., Parker Brothers was publishing in Germany. In 1973, they came out with this version. And you can see that it's the same game, the pieces are different. Again, there was probably some sort of a licensing agreement behind that. There was a version that was produced in Germany that had a mistake in the instructions, apparently. It said that the pieces couldn't move sideways. Definitely changed the gameplay. Lakeside apparently took the game out of their catalog in 1975. I don't see any reference to the game after that point. But they made a lot of them. And it was a very popular family game throughout the publication period. And you can see them all over the auction sites, and you see them very often in thrift stores and yard sales and stuff. It is a fun game. It's a challenging game, especially with that memory aspect to it, which I'm terrible at. And so that gives the kids an advantage when they can remember where things were. So whether you play chaos or chaos or chaos or chaos or chaos or some other chaos, you know what I always say sometimes. Be sure to play every day.